Alrighty, good morning. Good Saturday morning, everyone. I feel so happy that you guys decided to exchange your Saturday sleeping time with listening to me chat this morning with you. Azuar has told me to speak to you guys about PR and media management for startups. He also convinced me that I shouldn't be playing my word games this Saturday morning and have influenced me to wake up and be with the Shell LiveWIRE startups that he has been working with and has been passionately involved with for quite some time now. Um, he has told me all the good stories about his experiences with the startups in the Shell LiveWIRE program. And I believe there are also other startups outside of that circle with us this morning too. So I want to say thank you to Azuar and Shell LiveWIRE for having me this morning. I want to take a slightly different slant to today's topic, and I don't want to give you the traditional official definition of public relations, really, because I want to ensure that everyone leaves this chat with me understanding that it is really all about communication, communication skills, and utmostly important, it is all about telling our story. How we tell the story will be, how we tell the story will be in the next show, right, Azwar? Today is just about telling our story. Let me see. So, everyone has a history and a story. If you don't believe me, you just take a few seconds to start thinking about yourself. Every single story means something. My name is Hazel Hassan. I was born in Johor Bahru and grew up most of my life in Johor. Now, these are some of the things that some of my friends doesn't know about me. I was categorized as a high IQ child. Before you say anything, I have no idea what happened to that when I was as I get older. I finished high school before the age of 16. It's not good for because as a child you already feel a lot of pressure. I'm a computer graduate, but I love the arts, writing, and culture, and I love teaching. That's one angle when you talk about, I talk about myself. The other angle that I can talk about myself is that after working with a lot of number of years in the within the multinational companies, one day I chanced upon a friend of mine who said something to me that struck a chord. He said, Hazel, you've been in the MNC world for a lot of number of years. I think you should consider as your next career goal, as a career path, I think you should consider going into the government agency and giving back to the nation. So that was when I actually got a job with Cradle Fund. So that was my first foray into the government. And then when I went into Cradle Fund, I didn't have any government type of experience behind me. The only thing that I had was my faith, my confidence, and also my network. So that's another angle that I can talk to you about. That's another angle of the story about me. So now, when you want to talk about you and your brand for a communication objective, you must be able to tell your story to get people to talk about it, to talk about you, about your company, about your team, your clients, your product. It's all about you. So you guessed it right. PR is all about telling a story. When you want to tell your story, you actually subconsciously answers or stating the what, when, who, where, how questions. Think about that for a bit and start carving those questions in your head and working on the answers to help you tell your story. Now, why is your story, your point of view important? Um, in business, I believe it's one of the most essential elements of leadership and what do you call that? And influence. It is a perspective, so to speak. that we bring from what we experienced or learn. I've coached and mentored many startups, and I like asking them, what is your point of view? And let me tell you, it is very important to share your point of view. A point of view gives you a voice, provides what you call that a unique perspective. It can establish you as a leader, and believe it or not, helps you become an influencer for your own brand. How you get to where you are at now. What was the inspiration that happened on that very day when you wake up in the morning and say, you know what, today I'm going to make straws from rice. Today I'm going to build an empire that my future generation will be proud of. Perhaps today I'm going to help farmers sell in my newly minted online store. So your point of views are priceless in this equation. Sorry, but as always, I had to bring this into my conversation. So Obi-Wan Kenobi one time told Luke Skywalker this. So what I told you was true from a certain point of view. You're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our point of view. So that was Obi-Wan Kenobi talking to Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi. Now, before you start telling me you're not important, you're just a startup, you're not anyone, yada, 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 let me stop you right there and let me tell you why I do what I do, why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I'm sure Azuar has this in him too, having known Azuar for a bit. I want to give startups the opportunity to tell everyone their stories. That's number one. I strongly believe it will inspire somebody. Even if you think it will not, I strongly believe it will inspire somebody. I have in my course of work shared a lot of stories, successful stories, sad stories of failures, but these are stories that our great startups have created around the country. So I want them to tell their stories. I want them to tell their stories. I want to tell their stories, and all of you need to tell your stories. Talking about giving our points of view, where do we start? What do we do? 3 very easy things to think about. Please have a clear thought on the story you want to tell. Have an inspiration of where you want to see your story published in. I'm sure you have an ambition of, looking at your own story printed somewhere. All this must also match your marketing objective, not your sales objective though. Remember, PR is only about filling in the sales funnel. You still need to do the selling and get the deal closed. Right. Now, once you have these thoughts, you'll be running back to me asking me these questions. And I do want you to think about these questions. These are very important parameters to set your story, to set your storytelling path. Now, you have your point of view and your story. Who will you sell your stories to? Who will listen to your story? Who will read your story? Will anybody read my story? So this is one part of the hurdles in your path that you need to clear. So how much does it cost is subjective. It depends on what you're after. And it also depends on your target. Are you as a startup looking towards going regional? Are you staying in just Malaysia? Are you just staying within the state you are in? So this is something that you need to think about as you grow your business. The next one is, oh my God, who do I call? There's so many specific writers, journalists, editors, all from different desks that you need to get to know and understand. You get you need to get to know and understand what they look out for, and whether my story fits what they want to hear and what they want to write about to their readers who probably want to read my story. You get what I mean? So you have the lifestyle desk, property, education, technology, food. Which ones is your target that will help you tell your story that is relevant to their audience and yours? So building a network of investors are important. Building a network of clients is most important, but building a network of editors and journalist friends are important too. So if you don't have that network, you get help from people like Azuar. Okay, now let's talk a little bit of business. Now that you have got your story, you need to prepare your press kits. So a show of hands of those who have press kits ready. Okay, most of the startups that I meet on a daily basis would need to start with having to create their own press kits because they don't have an. It's like, oh, it's all on my desktop, but it's not all together. So you guys have to think about this clearly, uh, ev- especially when you are going towards into your public relations journey, public relations campaign journey. You need to think about this. So typically, it will have your high resolution images of yourself, your co-founders, your product, your team, your farmers, your fleet, your packaging, all of those. Just imagine looking at all these photos next to your story in a printed magazine somewhere. So fact sheet that talks about your product or your company, basically a go-to summary of your whole world, your brochure, of course, your bio, and of course your press release. So this is a standard thing that you're looking at that you need to work on, that you must have as press kits. So and of course it will be renewed, changed, and updated, so to speak, as you go down your entrepreneurial journey and grow. So this is not like carved in stone. So it's a thing that you build from time to time. And folks, most importantly, you must plan. So there was this one startup, I shall not name names, that came up to me saying, Hazel, I want to write a press release. And I go, okay, do you have something that you're launching? And he said, no. And then I go like, so why do you want to come up with a press release? So he doesn't know. So the same thing as you plan your whole life, plan your PR activities too. Um, when do you want to do what, where, and how? Um, in this case, just kind of please pay attention to timeline and the projection of your business when you chart this plan of yours. So this is just an example that I fish out, that I think you can, what's the word? You can adopt or adapt. Prepare a timeline so that you can target your PR work. Do what first? Prepare what first? After that, what do we do and when? Who's going to do it? So if you take a look at this very simple guideline of a timeline, you know very well when you're going to have to start work. You know very well when is your targeting your press release, your story to be out. Is it going to be a new product? Is it going to be a partnership announcement? So when is it going to be finalized? And this timeline is basically a guidance on a simplistic project management route that you can easily adopt to. In an entire campaign, most often than not, especially in today's day and age, we will have we will have to involve the social media campaign in the midst of our overall PR campaign. Plan that together so that you will have a wholesome campaign. Of course, when you're already planning for your PR campaign, you will already put in one of the tasks to be writing of the press release. Remember the story, remember your point of view, and remember to think about who to pitch it to. And you must pitch to the correct editor at the right media. Let me tell you something I think a lot of us experience, and perhaps some of us doesn't know this, but today securing I have an echo.
Again, Hazel?
Yeah, today securing earned media coverage is more challenging than ever. We are seeing a trend of shrinking or disappearing newsrooms. Fewer reporters are being asked to cover more bits and churn out more content every day. All this means that when you do finally land on that elusive media placement, it's critical that you make the most out of it. Share on social, push out the coverage, create a newsletter where you can send out to your subscribers or your clients' database to update them on what has been in the news. Use it as part of a campaign. As part of this strategy, you might target the right influencers on Twitter or LinkedIn even. Don't forget to post on your website. Create a media tab to share all of your stories that has been written. Leverage, because the world is shrinking. I can see that some of my media friends are no longer media people at today, and if you land on a clip, do leverage on it. Now, speaking with the press can be intimidating and challenging for those who do not do it on a regular basis. To ensure that you tell your stories, to ensure that you or your business puts your best forward when speaking to the media in telling your stories, and reduce the chance of being misquoted, I have 10 tips for you. Know their deadline. That means know your deadline, because whenever you're talking about a printed media, they always have a deadline. If you're talking about TV, they always have a deadline before the editor calls out who's going to be where, So ask for the questions ahead of time so that you'll be able to prepare. Understand the rules of media. And this is something that I always like to work on with the startups. Practice. Avoid getting ambushed. Remember, the what, when, how, who. And as entrepreneurs, I know that you always have this at your fingertips. What do you do? Who are your clients? What is your revenue? What is your burn rate and everything? I know that you have this at your fingertips, but avoid getting ambushed. And if you're being ambushed, think about it first before answering, and remember this pitch that you're working on. Never wing it, and do not ramble. If you do not have any answer, or if you're lacking of any kind of information at that point of time, it is okay to tell members of the media, I don't have that answer for you at the moment. I don't have that information for you at the moment. Can I get back to you? Can I have your contact details so that I can get back to you? And when you get back to the office or whatever, please make sure that you actually get back to them, gain their trust. Avoid jargon and acronyms. Don't go when you speak to the media. Don't go, oh, my FBE is in the BMW, on the E23 kind of thing. So avoid those. They don't understand that. Only you do. It's your story. And tell the truth. The whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help us God. And avoid saying no comment. When you say no comment, that thing that you said, might, like, will be in the in the news, like, with a no comment from the speaker or something like that. So, and do not open yourself up to legal, what do you call that, to legal liability. So these are the 10 tips that I have for you today, that you might want to take note of. So, right. We are going into another lockdown soon, and I know that all of us are Zoom fatigue, Google Meet fatigue, and everything, but it's going to be one of those days again. How do I prepare for a Zoom interview? These days, it is likely that your interview will take place remotely. There can be benefits to this format, including being in the comfort of your own home and feeling more at ease. However, a remote interview means that you will miss out the benefits of a television studio. Because when you are in a television studio, it brings out your adrenaline, it brings out a different kind of energy and feelings, actually. And of course, you don't have the professionally managed sound and lighting, like if you are in a television studio, right? So prepare your what do you call that, at your home studio, by, okay, so turn off your phone to avoid interruptions. Choose a quiet room that is away from outside noise. Um, don't live next to a neighbor who's doing renovation. Make sure you have good internet connection so that your interview is not interrupted by technical issues. Um, Use flattering light techniques such as natural lights, lamps, and proper camera angles. Tidying up your background, less is more. A blank wall or a background with a few tasteful items that will keep the audience focused on you instead of your environment. So those are some of the things that I think. I mean, even if it is not a Zoom interview with a media, or with you telling them your story and your point of view, it could be also presenting to your future clients. So with that, I actually would like to stop and take your questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Hazel, for the sharing. We do have some questions from the participants, but again, just to recap a little bit what Hazel shared, I think the entire process is PR, is about communication, is about telling your stories. And next, there is a process behind PR activity, carrying a good press kit with a good photo of yourself, with fact sheets and all that, right? At the same time, it is about planning. And lastly, I think what is quite important is don't wait, right? Be prepared, don't get ambushed. And if you can't answer something, don't just be honest. Like, I'll get back to you. But at the same time, don't lose that credibility and do actually get back to the media friends, right?
Yeah,
So
I forgot one thing.
yeah,
Don't say, okay, don't write this, but
again, Hazel, sorry.
don't say things like, when you are being asked a question, like, don't write this, but and offer your
There's nothing
opinion.
off the record. That's one thing to be
Yeah, don't go off the record. This is off the record. There's nothing, there's no such thing with the media as off the record. That
yes,
will end up in the headlines.
yes. There's nothing wrong with erring on the safe side, right, Hazel?
Yeah, and then there are also at times when the media would actually ask for your opinion about your competitor.
Yes.
Uh, Never say, I mean, the world goes around, right? So always play safe and always play nice, because it's a competitive world, I know, but it's also a friendly world. So we don't want whatever that we say end up in a printed magazine somewhere, and it will last for years and years.
All right. Hazel, we have a question coming all the way from Muka, right? This is our LiveWire winner for 2019, Asfa Tommy. He's a tech company dealing with all sort of things from VR to mobile apps, right? So his question is, I don't really know about VR stuff. I don't blame Asfa. I don't know a lot about engineering stuff. So we're here to help each other. So his question is it good for someone like him, a business like him, who's maybe more knowledgeable in the more technical engineering aspect, to go for a PR firm, help them with PR at a very early stage of their business? And should they set a budget for this? Any tips, Hazel?
Yeah. So startups, of course, range from all the way from technology, technopreneurs, right up to social entrepreneurship, right? So, like I said earlier, everybody needs to tell their story, and everybody has their point of view. Even if it's in the early stage of the business, you must have a target objective to wanting people to get to know you. Is it because you're trying to announce of a new partner, or are you trying to seek partners to be on board with you, or it's a new service that you want people to get to know of, and I think it is a good avenue for you to venture into, to take a look at what public relations can do for you. It is a long-lasting marketing uh, outcome from a PR perspective. And yes, typically there is a small budget to it, especially if you are looking towards using a freelance PR person, or engaging a boutique PR agency. You probably need somebody to take a look at how to craft out your press release, and probably somebody to help you to take a look at how to target which media to target your stories at, and probably also, you not necessarily just because you're an engineering startup, you will only be looking at the technology desk. It could also be business, and if your kind of business impact our daily lives, it could also be lifestyle.
All right. Hazel, leading to Asfa's question earlier, would it be a good idea to look for a team member, perhaps, right, to recruit somebody, to acquire somebody internally as their early stage team, from your experience dealing with many startups, to help them with PR? Perhaps, I know a lot of startups engage digital marketing person to help them with social media. Would PR be something that they should be considering?
Yeah. It depends on budget, of course. Boils down to that. But it does help to get a well-rounded person. And I think nowadays, if I were to take a look at some of the modules from our local universities, they do have communication skills that comprises of, so when they graduate, they actually have that ability to do public relations, as well as your digital marketing. So as a startup, perhaps that's something for you to take a look at. Of course, obviously, if you were to take a fresh graduate on board, their network will not be as extensive as an experienced one. But that's something that you can build. Like like what I said earlier, that's something that everybody can build, because everybody build networks every day. Network with the investors, network with your clients, and building networks with the journalists and editors is actually an added advantage. So it will help. And at the same time, if you have an extra budget, probably you can also engage and outsource to help you handhold your internal PR, unless if you have no problem with budget and you would like to actually hire an experienced person.
All right. Next question is from Hazik. Hazik is asking, Hazik is also one of a winner for 2017. He's also, I think, a runners-up or one among the winners for the Shell LiveWIRE Top 10 Global Competition. So his question is, we startups, we are just a humble startup. How can we convince the media to share our story on top of maybe, the Grab or Tokopedia of the world? It's a good
Mm,
question.
yeah, it's a good question. I have worked with startups that I've never heard before and that nobody have heard before. It's all about how you craft your story, and it's all about how you pitch to the media and to the right media, right? So I don't know whether you guys have heard about a startup that's called Poman. So they are a bunch of engineers. What they do is that they create apps on the mobile app. Like if your vehicle is tall on the highway or something like that, you have a breakdown, then you just go to the app and choose a workshop, right? So when I say that to you, you probably think, oh, it's just another app. Oh, it's just an app. Like when my car break down, you call a workshop or you call a mechanic to that. But see, the thing is that when we spoke to NST, when we spoke to New Straits Times, we spoke to the editor um, of tech. Now, in New Straits Times, the tech editor sits in the lifestyle division. So, what we pitched to him was how the two of the co founders actually met, what happened to them that actually made them actually create that app. So the story goes like a long way when they were actually back in school. They have always been friends from high school and da, da, da. So like I say, it's how you craft your story, and there's a lot of versions of stories. Even if you just like stop thinking about yourself, right? I'm sure you can come up with a few versions of stories of yourself. So um yes, I don't believe that you don't have any story to tell. It's just about how you package your story.
Yes. I mean, if we look at many of the top startups of the world as well, you look at the stories that how they used to work in universities building that app and all sort of things that happens along the way. So maybe
Yeah,
what you can do as Hazel advice, look back, what is it perhaps about yourself, perhaps about the consumer that you're targeting, perhaps about the problems in the market, anything that you can use as a hook, right? To get the attention of the media
yeah,
people.
yeah. So one day, I actually met a young man called Anthony Tan. He was walking in the hallways of my office. He was walking up and down, and I asked him whether I could help him. So apparently, he was up for pitching for grant. He was applying for a grant at Cradle Fund. And you all know that Anthony Tan is actually the founder of Grab. So he was nervously walking up and down, and that was his first pitch at Cradle, and nobody have heard of using other people's cars to go places. We were so used of you know stopping a cab to go somewhere, calling a phone line to book a cab during those days. But look at where he is now. So when he first pitched to a table of analysts and at Cradle Fund, everybody was like, will this work? But it's the way he tells the story that, look at where he is right now. And he started like from ground zero,
All right.
asking for a government grant to actually help him build his app.
Fantastic. I think it's not where you start, it's where you end up and going, I guess, right? And I think the same goes to all our LiveWire participants today. So
Mhm.
the next question, Hazel, is from Raniza from RFM Global. This company is also, again, we keep having questions from the winners. Maybe winners like to ask questions, so keep the questions coming. So uh, according to Raniza, they have tried everything during this pandemic. Nothing seems to work, right? Because the challenges in terms of constraints, the movements, and maybe the slow market environment and all that. So she's asking any tips that they can do to boost their business through PR that you can share with them.
Right. So let me tell you another story. I actually left Magic in March of 2020 at the peak of, at the start of the pandemic, right? So I was skeptical at that point of time, but lo and behold, um, suddenly all of the startups were looking out for an avenue to tell their stories because they can't go out anymore. They can't go and do your normal teh tarik and whatever to meet up with people. So they actually look towards telling their stories to a single point of media so that a lot of people can actually read about them rather than they go to each and every one of them, right? So they have to leverage their time, and they have to leverage um, on the fact that they can't go anywhere and everybody's locked down. So during the pandemic, I found that the number of public relations activities actually goes up more than 300%. So, you know, it was that RMZ just now?
RFM Global, Raniza.
RFM. Yeah. So yeah. So there's a lot of ways that you can actually work your way through to ensure that people actually notice you. But like I said just now, when you work on your PR campaign, you don't forget your social media, because everybody would have a lot of time in their hands. Everybody will be in front of their device, and this is the time where you capture everybody via their device.
I can add to that because just to share a little bit context for Hazel as well, RFM Global is actually in the business of snacks, and what they do is they make dried fruits, sort of freeze dry or something like that. I think Raniza probably better at sharing this. So what they do is they actually have a very unique story. Their product is based on local produce and fruits. So in their case, one of the most popular product is terung dayak, being compressed into dried fruits for snacks. So perhaps from PR perspective, just to share a very practical idea, maybe you can look at something along the line of lockdown, people missing their hometown, things like that. So they can have a bit of that flavor all throughout the time that they spend at home, perhaps, right? So it's about creating that story, creating that how do you present the story as well, that it captures the imagination of people, not just the media, but also now social media as well.
Mhm. Yeah, totally.
If I can share a little bit, if you talk about media, there's the own media, your own website, your own pages and all that. There's also the earned media. So it actually works in an interlinked, connected manner. So it's not like you focus on one thing and then everything will work well. Now people talk about omni-channel, how you need to tackle everything. So maybe that's a tip that Raniza can take back, right? So
Yeah.
we have more questions, Hazel. Are you okay to take on more questions?
Sure.
All right. So the next question is from Sharifah No Faizah Wan Mansho, again a winner. For our 2019, her business is Ahmad Tama. What they do is they sell dates. They're quite innovative. The branding, packaging is quite excellent, right? So she is asking, if we were to set aside a budget for our PR activities, how much should we set aside, right? It sounds like she has very deep pockets here.
Right.
So, how would you advise on that? Maybe I can add on a little bit. Hazel would probably be better to advise on the PR perspective, but coming from advertising myself, normally our budget is based on, I mean, one indication that we can use is the target revenue that we hope to achieve. So, for example, if we plan to achieve 1 million, as an example, would we want to set aside a 5% or 2.5%? So that goes back to the effectiveness impact of your activities, but at the same time that gives you an indication that you have a return on investment. If you set aside a certain portion to a realistic budget, realistic target to the revenue that you want to generate, right? Perhaps that's something. Or even if you can look at it on the long run as well, how long will you get that return on investment? So with advertising, sometimes I do advise they're about plus or minus 5% north or south, right? Maybe Hazel can answer on the PR side.
Okay, that is also subjective. Um, first advice is that don't go to the bigger guys. You know, you have all the Ogilvy and um, the big guys, right? So you probably if let's say you were to take a look at hiring a freelance person or a boutique PR agency, you probably need to take a look at a starting of 3,000 onwards, depending on the work. I know a few freelancers that uh, do press release, the whole entire press release management for you, meaning they will write the story for you from scratch. They will pitch to the media, and they will ensure coverage for you, and all that. So that would probably be about 3,000 and above. So it depends on what is your target actually.
All right. We have a cheeky question from M here. I'm not sure who M is. It's just M there. Could be M from James Bond. So his or her question is, uh, do you have a list of media contact and how can we reach out to them, email and contact? So maybe if we don't answer that question as in we give them a list of media contact, but how can they get the list of the media contact to start with?
It's easy. Buy all of the media, do all your research on website. You will find who the editors are, their emails, and their contact numbers. Create your own database.
Sweet and simple, right? So
You have to start somewhere. If
yes.
you want to start building, you have to start somewhere. So that is the basic thing that you can do.
Yep. I
Yeah.
think expand from what Hazel is sharing is um, take the initiative, don't be shy, right?
Mhm.
Do cold calls, just go on the website, send them a message on LinkedIn. You can just type LinkedIn, Star Media Group or The Edge Communications. I'm sure you'll get somebody and maybe, they might just respond, right? Okay. So next question we have from Moses. Moses,
Azwa,
yes,
don't forget that the editors and journalists are people.
yes, yes. Can I share our tip, Hazel, to them?
Sure.
Send them a lot of cakes.
Find out what they like.
All right. So we have a question for Moses. Moses is from Edabaran. It's a fantastic business. He's a winner of our LiveWire program for 2020. They're an online retail clothing business where they sell clothes with quite a lot of attitude, but also with a Borneo Sarawak twist. A lot of it is the Orang Ulu visuals and all that, and text. So his question is, how do we measure whether our PR campaign is effective? What are the common usual metrics being used, Hazel?
Okay. So the metrics that we always use is the PR value, where if let's say you were, okay, how do I put this? We will take a look at the clipping of the story that you have. Let's say that your story comes out in the Star, right? Now we take a look at the size of that story, and give you the PR value of that same thing. If let's say you were to not pitch for news to the editor and it gets printed, and if you were to purchase that particular size, how much would it charge? I mean, what is the value of that? I can tell you, the Star, for example, is not very cheap. So the normal size, just like a very short, um, a very small space, it can cost up to 12,000 ringgit to 14,000 ringgit. So you can do a basic calculation of your PR value. And again, I want to remind everybody that just because your story comes out in the newspaper, don't expect people to be knocking on your doors on that day, like and break down on your door. Because a lot of people think that whenever their story comes out, this will happen. But most often than not, they will get one, two, three, four of a very quality call. I can share you a story from Vector Labs. They're an engineering team. They talk about IoT, they talk about LoRa, they talk about smart cities, smart lights, and things like that. And you guys would think, how do you package that into a story, right? So when they win a deal, it wasn't really a very good a very huge deal, but we made a story out of it, in terms of creating awareness of what actually they can contribute towards the building of a smart city of a suburban, right? So from there, this story came out, and from there they had calls from Pabadanan Putrajaya, they had calls from Petronas that was asking them to partner with them on projects. So those can be your can be set as a guideline lah, I would say.
I think measurements are quite interesting. I think especially now with the availability of data and all that. Just to recap what Hazel shared just now, you can look at the value from the that baseline, that if you have to pay for your content to get into the Star, how much would it cost? And through a more, I guess, less of a buying approach, where you do your PR, you get your press releases published, that will be the value of the content that you're getting, right? Other type of measurement is, of course, how often do you appear on media? You can also list the type of media. I work with Hazel a lot, and I learn a lot from her as well. Things like tier one media, digital media. So you can set internally your targets for how frequent do you want to appear, where you appear, and also the other one is on the value of it. And also another way that I think is quite useful, because ultimately it's about reaching people, it's about shaping minds, shaping perception, is how many people would you have been able to reach through that media. Say if you go on one publication, they have 100,000 readership and all that, then you can measure from the reach perspective or metrics as well. All right, I just want to acknowledge a question from Kathleen Thea Luna. Her question is quite similar to Haziq, which was zero experience, right? We shared about it just now. You always have to start somewhere. You can do your cold calls and all that. But perhaps we'll keep this question batch with the other questions. But perhaps we can try to answer from this perspective of somebody launching a new product. Any tips from the PR perspective of launching a new product? Let me see if we have other questions. Okay, we have one from Stansfield here. Um, okay. Uh, any experiences or sharing with regards to agriculture, business, and PR? So maybe those two questions. We take, maybe these are the last two questions, unless you want to ask questions. But okay, Hazel, the first one is both of them related to launching. One is just
Yeah.
launching a new product. The other one is perhaps more specific to agriculture products.
Yeah. Okay. So uh, remember the timeline and the projection that I showed earlier. So you have to think about what is your primary objective when you launch your product, right? Is it a brand new product that you're introducing to a brand new user? If that is so, then make sure that you have your story intact. You must have your numbers, you have your target audience, you have your target percentage of market share that you want to hit. And work on your press kits. Make sure that all of the facts are there. Make sure that your photos are there. Photos do tell a lot of stories. Make sure that all these are ready, and we can take a look at it and actually advise you what else is missing there.
All right. With regards to agriculture, Hazel, have you?
Yeah. So like I say, PR is for everybody from the technology startups right up to the social entrepreneurship. Agriculture is one of them. It is of interest to members of the media. I know that sometimes I get startups that I coach saying, we're just farmers, we're just into agriculture, but there are a lot of interest surrounding agriculture, agri-tech, farming, that members of the media are looking out for. So put your stories together and take a look at it and target it properly. And if you do things well and you do things really well, the media will come back to you for other stories. They will not just wait for you to pitch to them. They would actually come to you and say, you know what, for the next issue, we're actually working on a particular angle. So this is the angle. Are you able to be part of this story? So if you do it really well, so this could actually happen to you.
All right. With that, thank that is all the time that we have today. For today, thank you so much for all the questions. Thank you so much for.
I want to end,
Please, Hazel.
Azwa, I want to end with this one image. I want to end the session with you today with this picture in mind. Remember this Instagram egg that managed to get almost 54 bloody million likes. Now, don't come and tell me that you got no stories to tell. Think about that.
I think that's very true. So may the force be with you always. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for sticking all the way to the end. But don't go yet. I take this opportunity to take a group photo with Hazel. Right? I'm sure all of you want to take a group photo with Hazel. So just to share, you can see from Hazel sharing today, we can see how important PR is. A lot of the thing that we read in the papers about all the companies that we admire, a lot of it is a result of PR, good media management work, right? So I would like to thank Hazel again on behalf of Jensen, who's with us here, LiveWire team. Thank you so much. Also for the audience, thank you. If you would like to see more sessions like this in the future, please share us some love in the chat. You can also contact us, hello@satucreative.com, if you have any interesting topics or any feedback that you want to share. We are soon going to have a celebration, although it's MCO time. Selamat Hari Gawai, Tadau Keamatan to all our friends in Sarawak and also in Sabah who may be joining us today. Stay safe, stay at home, right? We don't want to risk everybody. Remember, no one is safe until all of us are safe.